It's Friday, the 9th of February 2024. Welcome to the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 stories in 5 minutes. Let's get cracking, because story number 1 is a big one. Labor has done a deal to push through the third part of its workplace laws, allowing casuals to switch to permanent positions and introducing minimum pay for gig workers and owner-drivers. This is big, isn't it?
Sure is, and that's on top of the right to disconnect rules, which gives millions of workers the right to ignore after-hours emails, texts and phone calls. The closing loopholes legislation yesterday gained the support of independent senators David Pocock, Lydia Thorpe and Jackie Lambie, who, along with the Greens, mean that the deal is done. Workplace Relations Minister Tony Burke said the deal meant the Albanese government was poised to close more of the workplace loopholes that have been undermining wages and worker safety. There were some amendments. Businesses will have the right to refuse casual conversion on operational grounds, and contractors can't be forced to be employees if they earn above $167,000. The changes will also limit the coverage of the gig worker laws in a bid to exclude personal carers working on online apps. But in the end, the government got its way, and there are major changes on the way around casual workers, late night phone calls and texts and things like that, as well as the gig economy.
Yeah, and of course, with something of this scale, sure, not everyone outside politics is happy with the legislation. You've got some peak business bodies and CEOs have been pretty critical of the changes.
Yes, the peak body for small businesses, COSBOA, and the peak body for large businesses, the Business Council of Australia, were both out yesterday, not happy. Others, such as the Australian Retailers Association, kind of gave it support. Well, they actually called it the least worst version of the legislation. So they probably weren't happy, but they did like the amendments. Obviously, for retailers, the ability of casual workers to convert to permanent employees isn't great. However, the legislation will pass, so whether you like it or not, you're going to have to deal with it.
The least worst version, that's got to be the kind of the least enthusiastic support.
Yeah, I think so.
I've ever heard. That's not bad. All right, on to story number 2, Sean. AGL Energy has announced a quadrupling of its core profit and a big hike in dividends on the back of much higher energy prices.
The core profit measures what the group is making on a day-to-day basis. And for the 6 months to the end of December, AGL made much more than 12 months earlier. CEO Damien Nick said the power stations were doing better, the energy market was more stable, and customers are paying higher prices. Don't we know about that? All those conditions have continued into 2024. AGL's biggest shareholder is Mike Cannon-Brooks's Grok Ventures. And a couple of years ago, the company was forced to abandon a splitting into 2 after Grok opposed the move. Mr. Nick said AGL was progressing its pipeline of new clean energy projects as it looks to replace old coal power stations heading for closure. AGL is targeting new clean energy generation and storage capacity of 12 gigawatts, which is enormous, by 2035. Yesterday, its share price jumped more than 10%.
Sean, story number 3, one of the country's biggest home builders, Mirvac, reported yesterday and said higher interest rates and weaker first home buyer activity was really slowing the market.
Yes, while it kept its profit guidance for the full year stable, margins are being squeezed. Mirvac builds homes, and that's about 2/3 of its revenue. It also invests, and that's the bulk of the rest of its revenue. It settled 1,131 lots in the 6 months to December, which was sharply up from a year earlier. But exchanges were down 25%, and pre-sales also fell. Now, exchanges obviously are the ones that's the first step before you settle on the home. So at least in that part of its business, the outlook isn't that strong.
Story number 4 is an interesting one, Sean. News Corp chief executive Robert Thompson says the media company is close to being paid for its content by artificial intelligence companies.
He was talking after the Murdoch-controlled company announced a better-than-expected 6 months to the end of December, with pre-tax earnings up across most parts of its business. Now, News owns digital assets like REA. It's got the book publisher HarperCollins, Foxtel, the Wall Street Journal, the Australian, the Daily Telegraph and the Herald Sun here in Australia. Mr. Thompson said negotiations with AI firms were at an advanced stage, saying courtship is preferable to courtrooms when dealing with AI companies, according to a report in the Financial Review. Late last year, the New York Times sued Microsoft and OpenAI for using its content to develop generative AI services. OpenAI has started striking deals to pay to access content. So far, it's done one with Associated Press and one with Germany's Axel Springer.
Last one, story number 5, Sean. How about this? The foldable iPhone and iPad are apparently on their way, with Apple planning to go against years of fighting the folding phone and launch its own version.
According to US media reports, Apple's working on a clamshell-style folding phone, taking on Samsung, Google, Oppo and Motorola, who have been providing that style of phone for many years. Consumers have said they like being able to open and close their phones, but Apple's always resisted. According to the Financial Review, the Galaxy Z Flip 5 phone has sold pretty well despite some problems with its durability. Folding OLED screens are still not as hardy as glass-coated standard screens, and the screen protectors that are applied to mitigate it can bubble and peel off over time. That's always been an issue. The report in the US media says Apple's flip phone won't be available until at least 2026.
All right, there we go. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Friday, the 9th of February, 2024. Remember to hit follow on the podcast, and if 5 minutes isn't enough, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed Business News, wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.